Welcome to Eerie Trail, where forgotten roads, haunted silence, and long shadows tell stories no one else dares to remember. If you're drawn to the strange, the lost, and the unsettling, you're in the right place. Like the video, drop your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more stories that don't just scare, they stay with you. The road wasn't even marked on most maps anymore. Old State Route 59, some called it, though the signs had long since rusted to illegibility, swallowed by brush, mesquite, and prairie grass. The asphalt had been cracked and buckled by decades of Texas sun, and what little remained was choked with creeping vines and scrub oak. But if you asked around the right barstools in towns like Lockhart or Lulling or farther east near Dibble, some of the older folks might still whisper about it. They'd say it used to be a shortcut between two now-forgotten oil towns. They'd tell you it had a name once, back before the accidents and the disappearances. Texas Road Murders. They'd mutter under their breath. Not meeting your eyes. It started with Eddie Carroll. He was a long-haul trucker based out of San Antonio, the kind of guy who prided himself on finding ways to shave 20 minutes off his routes. His dispatcher said Eddie had picked up a load of fertilizer from a plant outside Corpus and was headed north to Tyler. Somewhere outside of Giddings, his GPS lost signal. That happened sometimes in the hills out there. The signal blinked back about an hour later, only Eddie had somehow veered nearly 60 miles east of his planned route, dead. In the center of a nowhere patch of Fayette County, they found his rig 2 days later, idling at the edge of a bridge that no one had crossed in years. The cab door was open. His wallet and phone were still there. The CB was hissing static. But Eddie Carroll was gone. Gone without a trace. The next was a honeymoon couple from Houston, Ben and Carla Rader. They'd been on their way to a cabin near Caddo Lake, taking the back roads to avoid construction on the interstate. They'd left photos on Facebook the day before, smiling, beers in hand, next to their shiny red SUV. The last cell tower they pinged was somewhere near Old Route 59. The SUV was found 2 weeks later, roof crushed like a soda can, 20 feet down in a dry creek bed. No skid marks. No blood. No Ben. No Carla. By the third disappearance, a field researcher from UT Austin named Layla Singh, the Texas Rangers started sniffing around. Layla had been studying ghost towns and oilfield collapse in rural Texas. Her last known location was a spot marked Long Hollow on her hand-drawn map, right near that broken, buckled stretch of 59. Then came the whispers. People started talking about figures in the road. People in the fog. A man with no skin, just wet meat shining in the moonlight. A child with black eyes standing in the middle of the asphalt. A woman with a broken jaw who screamed without sound. Always on that road. Always after dark. It would have remained urban legend, another ghost story passed around. Dive bars and dear leases if not for the dashcam footage. That's what pulled me in. My name's Joel Hart. I write true crime books, or I used to. I burned out on murder scenes and cold case files 5 years ago after covering the Childress Ripper trial. But when an old friend at the Austin American-Statesman emailed me a grainy video clip and asked if I'd ever heard of the Texas Road Murders, I felt something old and cold stir in my gut. The video had been uploaded by a trucker named Del Grady. Said he'd been hauling cattle feed through Fayette County when he decided to take an old shortcut his grandfather used to talk about. Claimed it would shave 40 minutes off his trip. The footage showed 2 hours of nothing, just dark road, trees, the occasional buzz of the CB, but around the 98-minute mark, things got weird. There was movement at the edge of the frame, a flicker, a shape. Del's voice on the CB went tight. The hell is that? Something stepped into the road. Something tall and wrong. It looked like a man, but not quite. Limbs too long, joints too flexible. No face, just smooth, pale skin stretched over its head like wet cloth. The video cut out. Del Grady was found the next day. Or what was left of him. The cab of his truck had been torn open like a can of beans, deep claw marks raking through steel. Blood soaked the seats, but there was no body. Just his right hand, clutching the dashcam's memory card. I should have left it alone. But you don't do what I do without developing a certain taste for the dark. It pulls you. It whispers when you sleep. So I rented a car, packed my field recorder and a Glock I hadn't fired in years, and drove east out of Austin. I had the old maps. I had Dell's last known GPS coordinates. And I had that cold, thrumming certainty that something was waiting on old Route 59. It took me half the day to find the start of the road. The sun was already falling when the gravel turned to cracked asphalt. When the mesquite trees grew denser and the cicadas louder, I passed no signs, no markers. Just a rusted gate someone had left open, hanging crooked on a single hinge. First few miles were uneventful. Just decaying road, overgrown brush, and a sky turning the color of bruised fruit. But around mile 5, the air changed. Not cooler, just still. No bird song. No wind. Even the cicadas stopped. That's when I saw the girl. She stood on the shoulder about 100 feet ahead. Back to me, wearing a white dress stained brown at the hem. Her arms hung limp. Her head cocked slightly to the side, like she was listening. I slowed the car, heart hammering. I rolled down the window. "Hey," I called. "You okay?" She didn't move, but I heard something else, from the trees. A whisper. It said my name, not in a shout, not in a voice I knew. Just a dry, cracked whisper right behind my ear. I spun. Nothing there. When I looked forward again, the girl was gone. That should have been enough. That should have been the moment I turned around, drove to the nearest motel, and never spoke of this again. But I kept driving. Night fell fast. The road narrowed, trees closing in like walls. I passed old cars left to rot, some burned out, others gutted. A station wagon from the 70s with a child's car seat in the back. A minivan with windows smashed from the inside. Every mile it got darker. Not just the sky, but the air itself thick with the smell of rot and wet earth. At mile 11, my headlights caught something in the road. A man. Or what was left of one. He crawled, dragging himself on ruined limbs, face scraped raw, lips moving. Soundlessly, his eyes were milk white. One arm ended in jagged bone. He looked up at me and mouthed a single word. Run. Then something pulled him backward into the woods too fast. Like a puppet on a string. I floored it. The road twisted and looped like it was folding in on itself. My GPS went blank. I tried turning around, but every fork in the road led me deeper, and every attempt to backtrack brought me right back to the same goddamn bridge where they'd found Eddie Carroll's truck. And that's where it all broke. Loose. The fog rolled in, thick and yellow, and from it came the figures half-formed, skinless, crawling, twitching, dragging their ruined bodies toward my car. I locked the doors, turned off the lights. I tried to be still. But they knew I was there. One of them climbed onto the hood, eyes weeping black fluid, mouth opening in a silent scream, and then I don't know how. It was morning, sunlight, birds, the fog gone. I was parked on the side of a farm road 10 miles outside LaGrange. Number. Bridge. No monsters. Just cows in a distant field and the distant hum of traffic. My car was scratched. My field recorder was melted into slag. And on my windshield, written in blood, "We remember." I left Texas that day. I changed my name. I haven't written since, but some nights, when the wind is right and the dark is deep, I swear I can hear the whisper again, in the static of a radio, in the rustle of trees. They're still out there. On that road. And they remember asterisk. Risk. The first body was found outside of San Augustine, Texas, just off a stretch of cracked blacktop the locals called Murphy's Cut. No one knew who Murphy was anymore, and no one used that road if they could help it. It connected nothing to nowhere, just two dead-end county routes that hadn't been repaved since the early 80s. The only people who went down it were hunters, meth cooks, or folks too drunk to know better. The body had been dumped in the ditch like trash. A young woman, maybe. 25. No ID, no shoes. Her arms had been folded over her chest, almost like she was praying, but the skin had been peeled from her fingers like gloves. Her face was bloated, eyes gone. The ME would later say she'd been in the heat for 2 days, but the bugs hadn't touched her. Not one ant, not one fly. That wasn't the strange part. The strange part was her tongue, or rather, the lack of it. It had been removed cleanly, surgically, with no other trauma. Just gone. The local sheriff, Old Don Moffett, wrote it up as an out-of-county dump and moved on. Budget cuts meant there was no forensics team, no profiler, no DN, a rush. She became Jane Doe number 1473, buried in a potter's field under red dirt and a plywood cross. 2 weeks later, a rancher found the second one. This time it was a man, 40s, white, expensive watch, no wallet. Found standing upright in the middle of the road like he'd been frozen in place. Mouth wide open, eyes looking skyward, as if something had fallen out of the stars and burned itself into his last thought. Tongue gone. Just like the girl, bloodless, clean. They found tire tracks. But they stopped 20 yards away as if the car had vanished mid-turn. The grass wasn't crushed, no footprints. Just the man, standing there, silent and alone, as if waiting for judgment. The press didn't get wind of it. Sheriff Moffett buried it again, told his deputies it was ritual shit, some out-of-towner. Cult maybe cartel weirdness, maybe both. He started locking his cruiser at night. Started keeping a shotgun on the passenger seat. Started drinking more than usual. Then came the third body. And that's when I got the call. I was in Fort Worth at the time, scraping by on freelance copywriting jobs and occasionally reviewing horror films no one watched. My real name is Evan Harker, but in certain circles, I go by Harker Sin's, a dumb pen name I picked in college when I thought I'd be the next Stephen King. I wrote a couple of viral threads back in the late 2010s about weird true crime cases, the Benbrook Bone Pile, the Colma exorcism, the Henderson gas station haunting. Mostly internet sleuth stuff, clickbait, but every now and then, something real would slip through. This felt real. The call came from a man named Travis Deere, a retired DPS investigator who'd read one of my Reddit series. He didn't mince words. They're killing people out here. On the road. Same stretch every time. Same ammo, no help's coming. He gave me GPS coordinates and a date. Said he'd meet me at dusk. Then he hung up. I should have deleted the voicemail. Should have blocked the number and gone back to writing. Fake ghost stories for $10 a pop. But something about his voice stuck with me. Not the fear in it. He didn't sound scared. He sounded defeated. Like a man who'd seen the edge of something vast and unknowable and knew it was coming for him next. Packed a bag and drove southeast, past Crockett, past Lufkin, past all the places where the gas stations had bulletproof glass and no working restrooms. The air got thick. The woods got closer. The sky turned a sickly copper color. Murphy's Cut didn't show up on Google Maps. You had to use a county plat overlay from 1976 to even see the old turnoff. But it was there. Just 2 ruts and a rusted sign with no text left on it. I turned onto it at sunset. Dyer was already there, leaning against a navy blue Suburban with DPS tags. He looked old, weathered. His hair had gone silver, and his face. was the kind you'd find on a cigarette ad in the 60s hard lines Dead Eyes. He wore a pistol on his hip like it meant something. "You're late," he said. "You're lucky I showed up." He didn't smile. He led me down the road, not far, maybe a half mile. Then we stopped. The pavement here was different, more brittle, like it had been baked, then frozen, then baked again. The trees leaned toward the road at odd angles, like they were reaching for something. And the air tasted wrong, like sulfur, like rot, like metal. It made my teeth ache. Dyer pointed to the ditch. That's where the third one was. Local teenager. Football star. His dad found him curled in the fetal position, tongue gone. Skin under his nails. He fought something, we think. Whatever it was, it wasn't human. Any idea what happened to him? Dyer didn't answer right away. We've started calling it the turnaround. That's what the locals say happens here. You come down this road, and if you don't turn around, if you don't choose to go back, something chooses for you. He lit a cigarette with a hand that shook. There's things out here, Harker. Things that remember. Things that wait. And lately, they've been waking up. We stayed until dark. The stars were too bright, too close. The silence got so heavy. It felt like pressure on my chest. Then, just past midnight, we heard it. First came the sound of tires. Gravel. A car turning onto the road somewhere behind us. But there were no headlights. No engine. Then came the scream. It was low. Inhuman. Not pain. Not fear. Something hungry. We both drew our guns, but they felt like toys. We backed away, deeper into the woods. Dyer pulled out a recorder and whispered. Something in Latin. I recognized some of it. Protection prayer. Old stuff. Pre-Vatican. Then we saw the lights. Not headlights. Not fire. They hovered above the road, pale green like marsh gas, pulsing in rhythm. Something walked between them. Tall, bone-thin. It moved wrong. Like it didn't know how joints worked. It had no face. Just a smooth curve of skin stretched over a skull too long to be human. It stopped where the third body had been found. And it looked at us. No eyes. No mouth. But we felt it. That cold pressure behind the eyes. The sense of being measured. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't move. Then it opened its hands. There were tongues in them. Hundreds. All still wet. Dyer screamed. Not in fear. In recognition. I know you, he whispered. You're him. And then he was gone. 1 second there. The next, just a pile of clothes and a trail of blood leading into the trees. I ran. I don't remember how I got back to the car. I don't remember the drive. I woke up in a motel outside of Nacogdoches, shivering, my feet covered in mud. My recorder melted to slag in my bag. I tried to file a report. No one would listen. Dyer's personnel file was gone, erased, like he never existed. But I've started hearing from others. Other writers, truckers, paranormal, nuts. They've seen the lights. They've seen the thing with the tongues, they say. It walks the road at night, collecting pieces of us. The parts that speak, that scream, that confess. They say the murders are a warning. Or a harvest. They say the turnaround is opening again, and it's hungry. They say you can drive through the town of Halton and not even realize it. Just a smudge of a place in East Texas, tucked between the pines and the endless sprawl of forgotten highways. 1 church, 2 gas pumps, and a diner that hasn't updated its menu since 1979. You won't find it on modern maps, and your GPS will glitch out 10 miles in either direction. There are no billboards, no exits, no welcome sign. The locals like it that way. If you ask around in Jasper or Hemphill or any of the backwater towns dotting the Sabine, folks will tell you Halton's just a ghost town with a few holdouts. Nothing of interest. Nothing worth visiting. But if you press a little harder, and if they trust you enough to lean in over their beer and speak low, you might hear a name. The Red Mile. It's not a place. It's not even really a road, though it shows up that way, just a stretch of cracked asphalt on the southern edge of Halton, past the burned-out mill and the trailer park with the rusted-out swing set. It's exactly 1 mile long, flat, straight, surrounded by pine forest on both sides so thick it looks like a green wall during the day and a black one at night. There are no lights, no markers, and no escape once you're on it. They say if you drive the Red Mile after midnight, you'll see things you're not supposed to see. They say you won't remember getting on it. And if you don't turn around before the end, you won't be coming back. I first heard about the Red Mile in a half-lit motel outside of Tyler, from a woman who wouldn't give her name. She was mid-40s, smoked clove cigarettes like they were oxygen, and had a scar on her cheek like someone had once tried to peel her face off. Said she used to be a corrections officer, and one of her inmates, some serial killer from the 90s, would talk about the road every time it rained. Called it the Highway of Confession. Claimed it made people show their real selves. Claimed it was where he made his first kill. Said he didn't choose the victim. The road did. I didn't believe her, of course. But then she pulled a photo out of her wallet. It was a Polaroid, taken at night. Blurry, grainy, but you could still make out the key details. A road. A person standing in the middle of it, and behind them, something tall. Too tall. Blacker than the dark around it. Something with joints that bent wrong. Something that looked like it was leaning down to whisper. I took the photo. She let me. Then she disappeared the next morning. Her room was empty. Her bed unslept in. The motel clerk said no one had checked in under her name. I checked the security footage. There was no record of her ever being there. By then I was hooked. I'd been writing horror blogs and researching weird Texas lore for years, but this felt different. The Red Mile wasn't just a story, it had teeth. I spent the next 3 weeks digging. Every missing person in a 30-mile radius. Every traffic fatality between 2003 and now. Every abandoned vehicle report filed by the Sabine County Sheriff's Department. I built a timeline. A pattern. The disappearances all clustered around Halton. Always at night. Always on days with no moon. And always involving someone who'd been on that road before. Truckers, teenagers, hikers, people just passing through. The ones who made it out didn't talk about it. The ones who tried, well, most of them ended up dead. Or worse. There was a case in 2014. A school teacher from Nacogdoches who veered off Route 87 during a rainstorm. Claimed she blacked out and woke up on the Red Mile. Said her husband was with her, but when she came to, he was gone. Vanished from the passenger seat. The car door was still shut. No footprints. No blood. Just a single red feather on the dashboard. They found her 2 days later, barefoot and catatonic, 5 miles from where her car had been abandoned. She spent the next 6 years in a psychiatric facility. Never spoke. Just drew pictures. The same. Figure in everyone. Black limbs, long neck, red eyes. Smiling. I arrived in Halton on a Thursday. The town was smaller than I'd imagined. Dusty streets. A graveyard full of cracked headstones. Every storefront either closed or falling in. The diner was open, though. Inside, it smelled like burnt coffee and old meat. The waitress never looked. Up from her crossword. You lost? She asked. Just passing through, I said. You looking for the Red Mile? I blinked. What? She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. You're not the first. She brought me my coffee. Black. Scalding, bitter. Before I could speak again, she nodded toward the back wall, where an old photograph hung in a cracked frame. It showed a stretch of road. The same road from the Polaroid. You know what that is? She asked. I shook my head. That's what's left of the Vaughn family. They lived here in '62. All 6 of them went out there one night. Said they were chasing something. Lights in the trees, maybe. None of them came back. So who took the picture? She didn't answer. I drove out that night. I don't remember turning onto the Red Mile. One minute I was on a gravel road. The next I was under a canopy of black branches so thick it felt like a tunnel. My headlights stretched 20 feet and no more. The trees looked wrong. Too tall. Too close. Like they were watching. I checked the clock on the dash. 12:03 am. Something moved across the road ahead. A shape. Thin. Fast. I gripped the wheel tighter. The radio crackled to life. Not music. Not static. A voice. Tell the truth. Then silence. I hit the gas. The air changed. Got heavier. Denser. My ears popped. I could feel sweat sliding down my back even though the AC was on full blast. The windshield fogged up from the inside. And then I saw her, standing on the shoulder. Mid-30s, blonde hair matted with blood. She looked like she'd been in a wreck. Torn clothes, bruised skin, but her eyes were wide and empty, like something had scooped her out. I stopped the car, rolled down the window. Are you hurt? She took one step forward. Tell the truth, she whispered. What truth? Her face began to stretch. Her mouth opened wider than it should have. Her jaw cracked. Behind her, in the trees, something unfolded. It wasn't a shadow. It was the absence of shadow. Tall, thin, antlers or something like antlers rising from its head. Its eyes burned red. Its fingers brushed the tops of the trees as it moved. I slammed the car into reverse. No use. The road didn't end. No matter how far I backed up, it stretched ahead of me. 1 mile. Endless. The radio screamed. Voices. Screams. Laughing. Tell the truth. Tell the truth. Tell the D. I remembered. The truth. The thing I'd buried for years. Her name was Rebecca. My sister. We were 12. Playing by the river. She slipped. I could have saved her. But I didn't. I froze. Watched her vanish under the water. Screaming my name, I told my parents. I never saw her. They believed me. The figure stepped into the road. It smiled, and then everything went black. I woke up in my car, parked on the side of the road just outside Halton. The sun was up. Birds were chirping. Everything looked normal, but there were scratches on the inside of the windshield. And in the passenger seat, a single red feather. I tried to leave Halton. Every road led back to the Red Mile, even the ones that shouldn't, even ones that didn't exist before. I've been here 5 days now. The gas is low. My phone is dead, but I can hear the voice again, on the wind, in the trees. Tell the truth. The Red Mile doesn't let you leave until you do. And once you've driven it, it never forgets. They found the truck first, an old Peterbilt 379, jackknifed across the 2-lane blacktop like a sleeping giant. The headlights were still on, one flickering in the dawn haze, casting long yellow blades into the mist that hung low over FM 312. The trailer had gone off into a shallow ravine, split open like a rotten fruit. Its contents, wood pallets strewn like bones in tall grass. The cab was empty. No blood. No signs of a struggle. Just a lukewarm thermos of coffee and a logbook flipped to a page that read, Something ran across the road. Not an animal. Not a man. Just something. The driver's name was William Bucky Travis, age 58, out of Longview. 23 years on the road, clean record, no drugs, no drama. His dispatcher said he'd called in at 2:43 a.m., voice shaky, saying he'd nearly hit a guy or a deer or hell, maybe both, and then the call dropped. That was the last anyone heard from him. Bucky was the first. Over the next 6 months, 6 more truckers vanished along that same 10-mile stretch of East Texas highway, all between mile markers 122 and 132, all at night. All without a trace. Locals started calling it Death's Detour, but the state wouldn't put up signs. Wouldn't even acknowledge it. The Texas Department of Transportation quietly rerouted traffic, citing erosion risk, but every few weeks, another rig would go missing, always at night. Always in the fog dot, and always there were the screams. I grew up 30 miles from that road. My dad was a long hauler, ran freight from Houston to Oklahoma City. I used to fall asleep in the sleeper cab listening to country radio and the soft hum of tires on asphalt. That smell diesel, road salt, sweat still makes me feel like home. So when the disappearances started stacking up, I took notice. I'm not a cop, not a reporter. Just a man who's seen more than he cares to admit. My name is Roy Danning. One run a salvage yard now. But before that, I worked recovery, meaning when a truck wrecked, flipped, burned, or bled, I was the one who got called to clean it up. I've seen the worst the road has to offer. Or so I thought. What happened on FM 312 was different. It wasn't just the crashes. It was what we found and what we didn't. One cab had been torn open like a can of tuna from the inside. No driver, no signs of wildlife. Just claw marks long and deep, scoring the steel. Another was found idling in the middle of the road, hazard lights blinking. GPS showed it had gone off course by 12 miles. The driver's boots were in the sleeper, neatly placed. His clothes were folded on the seat. No blood, no prints. Just one word scratched into the glass of the windshield: run. The rumors spread like wildfire. Black dogs the size of bulls. Pale women hitchhiking with no eyes. Trees that moved when you weren't looking. Some old-timers even whispered about the man in the raincoat. I didn't buy any of it. Not until I got the call about Big Rick. Big Rick Tolson was a legend in our parts. 6'5", 300 pounds, born with diesel in his veins and a voice like gravel soaked in whiskey. He'd been driving since the 70s, claimed he once outran a tornado outside Amarillo. With 2 tons of livestock and a cracked windshield. He was also my uncle. Rick vanished on September 2nd, sometime after midnight. He was hauling a load of coiled steel out of Lufkin. The last ping from his GPS showed him turning onto FM 312, which he had no reason to take. They found his rig the next morning. Still running, still in gear, trailer locked. Engine warm. No Rick. I volunteered for the recovery. Maybe I shouldn't have. The inside of the cab was wrong. The mirrors were turned inward. Every single one. The radio was playing static, but when I leaned in, I could swear I heard breathing slow, deep, wet. The driver's side window had been fogged from the inside. There were fingerprints, small, dozens of them, like a child's. But Rick didn't have kids. Never did. I opened the glove box. Inside was a cassette tape. No label. No case. Just a strip of masking tape with 2 words scrawled in shaky black ink. He's coming. I should have left it there. Should have burned that goddamn tape and walked away. But I didn't. I found an old cassette player in the yard, wired it to a car battery, and sat in my garage with a bottle of Jack and a loaded .38. Just in case. I hit play. At first nothing. Just the crackle of old tape. Then footsteps. Soft, like someone walking barefoot across a concrete floor. Then a voice, Rick's voice, whispering, panicked. He's not a man, not anymore. He's tall, too tall. His skin is stretched tight like wax paper. Don't look at his face. Don't look at his face. Then silence. Then another voice. Not Rick. Something older, wetter. You can't hide on the highway. Ricky. Not from me. Not from the things you left behind. The tape ended with a sound I'll never forget, a wet tearing noise, followed by a long, gurgling scream. I didn't sleep that night, or the next. Eventually, I decided the only way to make sense of it was to go there myself. To drive the road. To find whatever had taken my uncle. I waited until the moon was gone, just like the story said. Gassed up my truck, loaded it with tools, maps, and with tools, maps, camera, brought a crowbar too, and the .38.FM 312 looked normal enough at first. Asphalt cracked in the heat, old roadkill crusted black in the shoulder. But about halfway in, my radio died. Then the engine sputtered. Fog rolled in from nowhere thick, yellowish, heavy like smoke. The trees began to lean in. I kept driving. At mile marker 128, I saw a figure on the side of the road, pale, tall, wearing a yellow raincoat soaked through, with something that shimmered black under the headlights. He didn't move, didn't look at me, but I could feel him smiling. At 129, the fog swallowed the truck. My headlights couldn't cut it. I could barely see the hood. I slowed to a crawl. That's when I heard it. Knocking. From the sleeper, 3 knocks. Then 2, then 3 again, Morse code. SOS. I stopped. Climbed out. The air smelled like copper and burning leaves. I opened the sleeper door. It was empty. Except for a Polaroid pinned to the ceiling. It showed Rick standing in the middle of the road. Behind him, the thing. Tall, faceless, long fingers spread like spider legs, wearing Rick's skin like a cape. Then I saw the shadow shift. The thing wasn't in the picture anymore. It was behind me. I ran, left the truck, crashed through the trees. Didn't stop until the sun came up and the fog burned off. When I found the highway again, I was 10 miles from where I started. My truck was gone. No one believes me. Not the sheriff, not the state, not even the other drivers. They say I must have dreamed it, must have had a stroke, or a psychotic break. But the tape's still in my garage, and sometimes, late at night, I play it again, not because I want to, but because his voice changes. Rick's. Every time I play it, he sounds closer, and one day soon, I think he's going to say my name. They used to call it Dead Man's Loop, a 4-mile stretch of forgotten Texas backroad that twists through the pine woods west of Navasota like a snake in its death throes. It's not on Google Maps, and even the locals pretend it doesn't exist anymore. But it's still there, barely paved, overgrown, cracked like dry skin. If you ask the right people in the right bars, they'll tell you not to go near it after dark, or after rain, or, especially, after a funeral, because that's when he walks. I didn't believe in that kind of thing. Not really. I'd heard all the backwoods boogeyman stories growing up. La Llorona, the Goatman, that lady with the bleeding eyes down in Conroe, just tall tales to keep kids off back roads and drunks in their lanes. But that was before I saw what was left of Henry Welch. It was July hot enough to melt the skin off your neck if you stood in the sun too long. I'd just taken a job with Grimes County Road Maintenance, filling potholes and laying down reflectors, that kind of thing. Second week on the job, our foreman Grady Brewer tells us we gotta complain about hazards out on the loop. I asked what kind of hazards. Grady just grunted. You'll see, he said. Pack extra gloves. We drove out in 2 trucks. 6 of us total. When we hit the dirt access road, my cell lost signal. Grady's radio crackled and died. Everyone got quiet. You could feel it like walking into a room where someone had just been screaming. The trees leaned in like they didn't want us there. At the entrance to Dead Man's Loop, there's a rusted-out fence with an old cattle gate that don't swing no more. Someone had hung 3 buzzard skulls from a chain across it like a charm or a warning. One of the new guys, Lyle, asked if it was a joke. Grady didn't laugh out. We drove in slow. That road hadn't seen maintenance in years. Potholes the size. OF washtubs. Roots cracking the asphalt like fists from underneath. But the weirdest part wasn't the road, it was the dead animals. Dozens of them. Lined up along the shoulder. Squirrels, raccoons, deer, all lying face down. All pointing in the same direction toward the curve, not torn up, not roadkill. Just dead, like they'd laid down and given up. Grady didn't say a word. He just took out a can of red spray paint and started marking spots. Told us to keep working, no matter what we saw. That's when Lyle found the piece of fabric. It was tangled in the branches of a scrub. Oak near the second bend, a ripped piece of a shirt, maybe denim. Looked old, torn and stiff with something black. Beneath it, half buried in the brush, was a man's boot, still laced. Still full of foot. We called the sheriff. He came quick. Said the boot belonged to Henry Welch, a truck driver who'd gone missing 2 weeks earlier. He'd been hauling rebar to a construction site in College Station and detoured through this area, according to his last GPS ping. No sign of a wreck. Just disappeared. They found more of him that night. His body was scattered across half a mile of pine forest. Not torn apart. Arranged. One hand nailed to a tree. His heart sitting on a flat rock like an offering. His face stretched across a stump, mouth open, eyes gone. The sheriff vomited. Grady just muttered, "He walked it." I didn't sleep that night. I kept hearing things, creaks on the porch, whispers in the vents, something tapping on the window pane. Just wind, I told myself. Just my imagination. But I couldn't shake the way those animals looked, how peaceful they seemed. Like they'd accepted it, like they knew. The next morning I asked Grady what he meant about he walked it. He didn't answer right away. Just lit a cigarette and stared off toward the pine line. My daddy told me this story, he said finally. Said it happened back in '42. A drifter came to town. Real quiet type. Wore black boots and a green canvas coat, even in the heat. Stayed in the woods. Didn't talk much. But folks started dying. Always the same way, heart cut out, face peeled. Sheriff tried to catch him. Never did. Then one day, he said, they found the drifter hanging from a tree. Rope around his neck. No one ever said who did it, but folks figured justice had been served. Grady looked at me, eyes hard, but the killings didn't stop. In fact, they got worse. And now, every so often, someone walks that road. Always alone. Always after dark. Doesn't matter if they're driving or hiking. Doesn't matter if they're lost or just passing through. He dropped his cigarette. Ground it out. He follows them. And if they don't leave the loop before it closes, he doesn't let them leave at all. A week later, Lyle went missing. Said he couldn't sleep. Said he kept dreaming about a man in a green coat standing at the foot of his bed. Said he felt pulled like something was calling him back to the curve. He borrowed a buddy's truck and drove out there. They found the vehicle parked at the entrance. Engine running. No sign of Lyle. Except for his shoes. Neatly placed beside the road. Inside. Them his severed toes. I didn't go back to Dead Man's Loop after that. I quit the job. Moved out of the county. Tried to forget. But some nights, especially after funerals, I feel it. The pull. Like a rope made of fog. Tugging at my chest. I dream about the curve. About walking it. About seeing something tall and patient waiting in the bend, face blank, coat soaked red. They say if you walk the loop and make it back before sunrise, you're safe. But if you hear footsteps behind you, don't look back. Because if you do, and you see him, that's it. That's your last sunrise. And the next poor bastard will find your smile nailed to a pine tree, still warm. The dog showed up 3 days after the funeral. A big black mutt with matted fur, yellow eyes, and paws too large for any natural breed. It stood at the edge of my property in central Texas, just past the split-rail fence that bordered the back. 40 and watched the house. Didn't bark, didn't growl. Just stood there in the dead weeds under the mesquite tree, breathing heavy and slow, like it had just run a long, long way. I didn't tell anyone, not at first. The funeral had been hard enough. My sister Marie was all I had left, and even that thread had frayed before her heart finally gave out. She died alone in a 2-room trailer off Farm Road 2904, surrounded by rusted junk, broken bottles, and notebooks full of strange, manic scribbles. The last one just said, "I buried it." But it still dreams. They said it was mental illness. Her mind had slipped. Too many years alone. But I remembered what she told me the last time we spoke, really spoke. Not counting the half-lucid voicemails I'd get at 2 a.m. She said, "Don't go back to the cabin, Pete. Not ever. Not even if you hear it calling." At the time, I thought she meant our childhood place, the old hunting cabin in Caldwell County. A rotted thing now, held together with vines and rusted nails. We hadn't set foot there in 30 years, not since that one summer. The summer she stopped speaking for almost a full month. The summer we found the well. The dog came every night after that. Always just after midnight. It never moved closer, never tried to breach the fence. But every time I looked out the kitchen window, it was there, staring, breathing, eyes like lanterns in the dark. I tried to scare it off, fired my .22 into the air, threw rocks. One night I even walked down to the fence with a baseball bat and floodlight. The dog didn't flinch, didn't blink. But as soon as the light touched its body, it cast no shadow. I turned and ran. I stopped sleeping. I started drinking. The morning of the 7th day, I found paw prints on the porch. No blood. No mud. Just ash. Charred black ash in the shape of those huge paws. And scratched into the wood of the door, "You left IT down there." I didn't tell anyone because I didn't want to hear it. Didn't want them saying I was crazy, like Marie. I thought maybe it was grief. Maybe my mind was playing tricks. Then I got the call from the Caldwell County Sheriff's Office. A hiker had gone missing out near Copperas Hollow. They were combing the woods near the cabin. Found Marie's name carved into a tree near the old deer stand. Then mine. Then the well. I didn't even know it was still there. Didn't want to believe it was. But the moment I hung up, I heard the scratching again. At the door. This time there was something wet behind it. Something snorting like a bull and whispering, "You promised. You promised to keep it locked." The cabin had changed. The roof sagged in the middle like something heavy had been crawling across it for years. The screen door hung from one hinge. The smell rotted wood, mold, and something older, something sweet and sour, like meat left in the sun hit me before I'd even killed the engine. There was no sign of the sheriff's crew. No yellow tape, no tire tracks, just silence. The dog was already there. Waiting at the edge of the clearing, still not moving, still watching. The well was behind the cabin, just past the burned-up grove of oaks. I could see the ring of mossy stones from where I stood. Something about the opening looked wrong too wide, like it had been digging its way back out. I remembered the game we played when we were kids. Marie and I, summer of '94. We found the well while chasing a rabbit. It was covered in dead vines, with a rusted lid made of sheet metal. The kind you'd cover a corpse with in the movies. I wanted to open it. She didn't. She cried when I lifted the lid. She cried harder when I dropped the old rabbit into it and listened for the splash. But there was no splash, just a sigh. A long, low, thankful sound. We ran. We never spoke of it again. Until now. I forced myself to walk to the well. The stones were warm, unnaturally warm, like a fever was building underneath them. I leaned in. At first, I saw nothing, just pitch black. Then the scent hit me, wet copper, rot, sulfur, like someone had buried a slaughterhouse. And then a whisper, "Come down, trade places." My knees buckled. I backed away, stumbling into dead. Leaves and flies. The whisper got louder. "You left me here. You left me hungry." Something moved inside the well. Wet, slapping sounds, like meat on concrete. I turned and ran back to the truck, but the dog was standing in front of it now, blocking the way. Only it wasn't a dog anymore. Its fur was peeling away. Its eyes had turned solid black. Its mouth hung open in a rictus grin that showed too many teeth, human teeth. Behind its jaws, I saw fingers twitching, children's fingers. Marie's voice filled my head. "We made it angry. You fed it. Now it wants more." I fired the .22. The bullet went through the thing like it was smoke. It didn't even flinch. Just stepped toward me and said, in a voice like my mother's, "Who do you love enough to send in your place?" I don't remember driving home. I don't remember the road or the sky or the miles. I just remember waking up in my bed, the sheets soaked with sweat, the smell of moss and iron in my nose. The dog was gone, but the well had followed me. It started with cracks in the dirt near the barn, then the sinkhole in the backfield, then the dreams always of falling, always of something waiting at the bottom. I called a priest. He came. He didn't stay. I haven't heard from him since. The paw prints are back on the porch now. Every night, closer each time. Scratch deeper into the boards, and the whispers louder, trade or join. I don't know how long I have. I don't know if writing. This will help, but if you see the dog, don't run, don't speak. Don't look into its eyes, because that's how it finds your name, and once it knows your name, you belong to the well. The woman came walking out of the corn just after sunset, barefoot and bleeding from her calves like she'd crawled through barbed wire. Her dress was torn, eyes hollow, mouth twitching like she was trying to speak but couldn't remember how. My cousin Jimmy and I were drinking Lone Stars on the tailgate of his truck, parked behind the grain elevator on the edge of Uvalde, Texas. I remember the sun was this blistered orange, like a peeled fruit left out too long, and the air smelled like fertilizer and dried blood. The woman didn't scream. She just kept walking, one foot dragging behind her like it didn't belong, and pointed down the row she came from. "She's still down there," she said. "She won't let me leave unless someone else goes in." Jimmy stood up and said, "The hell is this?" And then everything went bad. They call it the devil's crop. Some folks in town pretend. It's just a story, something kids whisper around fire barrels out near the stockyards. Others won't even say the name. But everyone knows that field off County Road 472, the one that stays green no matter the season, that gets replanted every fall without anyone ever seeing who does the work. They say it belongs to the Granville family, but the Granvilles all died in '92 house fire, except for the girl. Except for Ruth. She was 13 when it happened, skinny, pale, and wrong. I only saw her once outside the church, turning circles in the dirt while her mama screamed at her from the porch. They said Ruth was born sideways and never made a sound, not even as a baby. No crying, no laughter. Just stared. Her daddy put her in special school. She didn't last long. The fire burned for 3 days. They never found her body. And then the field started growing things it shouldn't. Not just corn, but bones, bits of cloth, doll parts, teeth. The sheriff cordoned it off for a year, then just stopped talking about it. But something kept planting. Jimmy wanted to call the police. I wanted to get in the truck and drive away. But the woman grabbed my wrist with a grip like iron and said, "Please, if you don't go in, I'll have to. Again. And I can't go back." That's when I noticed her eyes were bleeding. Just a thin, steady trickle, like her body was crying for her. She collapsed right there in the dirt. We didn't drive away. I wish to God we had. We walked into the field. The corn was taller than it should have been, easily 8-9 feet. Each stalk was fat and crooked, the leaves dull like dried skin. The air inside the rows was wrong thick and wet like a swamp, smelling of mildew and raw meat. We tried to mark our path with bits of torn cloth from Jimmy's shirt, tying them to the stalks. After a few minutes, we heard something moving behind us. But every time we turned, it stopped. We came to a clearing about the size of a living room, and in the middle of it was a scarecrow. Only it wasn't made of straw. It was a little girl, tied to a crossbeam with twine and rusted nails, mouth sewn shut with fishing line. Her eyes were open, but clouded like old milk. She twitched when the wind hit her. Her dress was old-fashioned, torn at the hem, and soaked with something black that steamed in the cool air. Jimmy whispered, "Ruth." Then the corn moved. Not. The wind it moved, like it was breathing. We turned to run, but the rows were gone. No path, no markers, just endless green. And behind us, a voice like glass scraping wood. One must stay. Jimmy grabbed my arm and screamed. I looked down and saw his feet were buried ankle-deep in the soil, roots crawling up his legs like veins. He tried to pull free, but the ground sucked at him hungry. Something laughed behind the corn. I ran for what felt like hours. The field never ended. The rows shifted, bent, turned back on themselves. I saw people in the corn faces without mouths, hands pressed flat against the stalks, watching me. I passed a row where every ear of corn had an eye in the center, blinking. Waitley. Another where the leaves whispered my name over and over in my sister's voice, and she died in 2018. I started to cry, but the field doesn't want your tears. It wants your choices. At some point I came back to the clearing. Jimmy was gone. So was the girl, but the scarecrow was back. And this time it looked like me. Same face, same shirt, same boots. Mouth sewn shut, head tilted like it was ashamed. I heard Ruth's voice, high and soft like wind through a screen door. Trade complete. And then I was outside the field again. The woman was gone. The truck was still there, keys in the ignition, Lone Stars still warm. My watch said 15 minutes had passed. That was 4 days ago. Jimmy's family thinks he ran off. They'll never find him. I keep seeing corn in my dreams now, corn with teeth. Rows that lead nowhere. Sometimes I see myself walking the rows. Eyes empty, skin gray, dragging my feet behind me. Scarecrow me. Last night I coughed up a kernel. It blinked. And this morning, out in the yard, the corn started to grow. But I didn't plant a thing. Ask ChatGPT.